This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin. Joining me this week, the nicer versions of Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets, Kara Szymborski.
That's a lie. Hello.
And René Rodriguez.
It's definitely a lie because I spent like 20 minutes trying to come up with like decent jokes to try and make a Statler and Waldorf impression to do the laugh like, ho, 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 ho. And I got nothing. And I'm really upset with you, Mike, about this because of my own failures. So how nice can we be? Or me?
Wow.
Wow.
Well, I didn't really mean to open this episode as a
you opened up a can of worms, bro.
It's a full-blown therapy session now. But before we get too deep into that, we do have one quick announcement. Episode 300 is coming next week. It's going to be a huge episode in terms of announcements and various interesting super cuts of a very fun set of little interviews that we've been doing with everyone on the show. So I hope you're all excited for next week. Make sure you are on the Discord. We are trying to get as many people as possible. We might be doing a Q&A if enough people show up. I'm just going to say that. So live Q&A potential that might go into the episode. We'll see. But regardless, it's going to be a huge episode full of announcements and other fun stuff. Mike, me, Nick, and Paul are going to be on the episode. It's going to be awesome. So let's get into things. Let's talk about comic books. Comic books are awesome. And so are you. René, you are throwing me off.
I'm sorry. I'm just laughing.
You know what else is awesome? When the show ends. Oh
man. I did this.
Yes!
I did this.
Don't make a Muppets reference unless you're ready to commit, Mike.
Mikey the Rappin here. We are going to be doing talking about comic books today, and I have two legally mandated questions that I have to ask you.
How have you been, and how have comic books been?
That's really
Let's start
spot
with you,
on.
Kara. Kara, go ahead.
Kermit, you know I don't have time to read right now. I'm practicing my voice.
Oh no.
All right, so I read a book this week that I had on my list for a few weeks ago. When I was on the show last month, I was really excited about a Batman the Animated Series Continues comic starring the Huntress. And I called the local comic shop and they were like, that's definitely not out yet. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the info. So now I'm a liar on the show and I'd like this book, please. And they actually never called me back, but I was fortunately in the store last week and saw there it was on the shelf. And I'm like, you motherfuckers never called me back. But I got the last one and I bought it and I read it. And it's so this series, this is my first dive into this Batman the Animated Series Continues comic. And it's interesting because they're kind of towing this line between what the show actually was when it was airing on Cartoon Network and the potential for being perhaps a little bit more adult, like some of the DC animated universe stuff has been. Like there was some more like the art style and the conversational tone is the same as the show, but there's like a little more cursing. And Huntress is a character who just like straight up murders people. Like her conflict with Batman is always that Batman draws the line at killing people, and Huntress is like, nope, they're on my list, here's my crossbow in their face, and now they're gone. And so you don't actually see her murder anybody on panel, but it definitely happens, and they do not dance around that at all. And that is just something that they would, I don't think, ever have gotten away with on children's television. Right. But as someone who likes Huntress in the comics where they are able to be more adult, this was kind of a happy medium of, if I had this comic as a child, I kind of been like, wait, this is darker than what I'm used to. But I thought it was cute. I don't know if I'd necessarily like pull the series, pull the issues every month, but for like a one-shot thing where I just wanted to get a little Batman fix, it was great.
Gotcha. Yeah, I when you said this is more adult, I was like, is Kevin Conroy going to say the F word? And then I realized that it's a comic book and there are no voices.
I'm sure somewhere there's a recording of Kevin Conroy saying fuck, and then we can just splice that in.
Fuck.
That guy's talking about my potty mouth.
Yeah, I mean, all right. René, what about you? How have you been? How have comic books been?
Well, first, wacka. I've been fine. I'm
so mad that I started this. I can't even explain it.
Look, this might be the best day of my life. So, anyway, I've been good. Comics have been good. I haven't been I've gone through a lot of changes in my life. I don't. Sorry, that just came out. Dr. Phil.
I was waiting for like David Bowie's changes to come in.
No,
but
what happened was because I used to make this joke in college, but Dr. Phil just said the same thing twice. So it was like, in order to make changes in your life, you need to make changes in your life. And apparently that was so embedded that I was like, there's lots of changes in my life. Just came out. But I got a new job and I moved. And so I've been real busy. So I haven't read too much. So I read Mao, Volume Number One, story and art by Rumiko Takahashi. And this is the author of Ranma 1/2 and Inuyasha.
Oh.
It's her new series. She's crushing it. It's still about exorcists and ayakashi, or demons. And Mike, before you even get there, I'm aware it's different when it's, there's no creepy music and weird lighting, okay? It's just on a panel. It's just in black and white. I can dig that.
Yeah.
And it's a repeated formula, but also it's really good. Not really good, but I don't know yet. I've only read Volume 1, but I like it. I'm going to keep reading it. So I'll keep you updated.
The cover looks really cool.
I don't think I knew that creator did both Ranma 1/2 and Inuyasha.
Oh yeah, she's got a ton of stuff too. You're like, oh, they did that as well. Wow, It's incredible. And like, I like their stuff. They're really good. And I'm just like, yeah, of course I will pick up your new series. Absolutely. You've been crushing it for like 20 years, maybe 30. I don't know. I'm bad with time. The point is, they're crushing it. I like it already, so I'm going to keep reading it, and I will keep you guys updated on my feelings about it. The other series I read was Can't You Just Die, My Darling, Volume Number 6 and 7. I've been reading this on Kindle Unlimited. Nice. Story by Majuro Kaname and art by Soso Sakakibara. And it's got major Tokyo Ghoul vibes. And so it's basically like people are being infected with this disease that makes it so that you want to kill the person you're in love with.
Oh.
Okay.
So like you're so overcome with love that you're just like, I really, really love you and I really, really want to kill you.
No, that's okay. Twilight already did that. So
yeah, so it gets real intense, and there's also lots of like organizations going on, and also like if your love is so intense, you get powers. But
also Twilight, René.
Look,
we've
so far
already been here as a people.
Here's the thing, though. At least the translator can speak English.
Whoa.
What? Let's just keep moving.
I think he's making a commentary about Stephanie Meyer's writing style, which
Shabam!
Burn René.
You got it. Anyway, I kind of like this series. I've been reading it kind of slowly over the past couple months, and it's like only got like 13 volumes or something like that. So I'm getting through it slowly but surely. It's enough that I want to keep coming back. I want to know what happens at the end, but it's nothing to write home about. But it's enough to talk about on your podcast, I guess.
Sick burn on the show, I guess.
He's still going for Statler Waldorf, not quite getting the part.
No, it's just more of a is he an asshole vibe? And the jury's still out. Although I think we're weighing in on one side.
Is this what you want to be cultivating right now when Mike's about to share his picks?
No, not really.
What have you been reading, Mike?
I can only do one Muppet impression, and you already heard it. It's Kermit. It's Kermit the Frog. And so that's as much as I'm going to try.
You don't got Gonzo or Rizzo up your sleeve?
I don't know if I could do a Rizzo. I don't know.
That's pretty excellent.
That was pretty good.
We're going right off the cuff here. I wasn't prepared to do Muppet impressions today.
I just spit all over my computer.
Okay. Well, I did read a couple of books. I've been doing all right, all things considered. I feel like I've been trying to read as much comics as possible and feeling like I read none. And then I look back over everything that I've read and I go, wow, I read a lot of comics, but I don't want to talk about any of them because none of them were that interesting. I had a really weird week with comics where nothing was really like stand out with the exception of these two comics. I read Colosseum volumes 1 through 3. This is like Coliseum, but with a G. I don't know why. This is by Yasushi Baba. It's published by Kodansha, and I saw that this was on sale as part of like a big Comixology Kodansha sale that was happening, but it turns out the first 6 volumes of 7 are all on CU. I don't know if this is an ongoing series or what, but nonetheless, I checked out the first volume and then I couldn't stop reading, and I read the second, and I read the third. Ultimately, my thoughts are, I don't know if this is a good manga or a bad manga, but I keep reading it because it keeps amping itself up in terms of ridiculousness, where before you even ask me any questions, I just need to give you the synopsis, right? The world has changed in some capacity where a person who is clearly Vladimir Putin, but not, his name is like Vladislav Putinov or something, and he looks exactly like Vladimir Putin, has discovered these bracelets that he can give to people, including himself, that make you essentially unkillable by other physical objects, with the exception of other human fists or skin, or by being dropped to the ground via a suplex. So he gives these bracelets to his like closest army officials, and then they also found a way to turn you into like a 9-foot tall pack of muscles. And the only way these people can be killed is by literally being suplexed onto their neck. So the whole idea is that the world starts to get these things, like a person from Japan comes to there, a person in America finds them, and they end up creating these super soldiers, very similar to Kieran Gillen's like Uber, and they just keep finding each other in various places where they have to fight, and they are doing this special form of jujutsu, which is you do a backflip and suplex someone.
Wow.
It's really fucking weird.
I was going to say, somebody call One Punch Man and just come in and clear all this up. Like,
I know, right? Exactly.
I think I need to read this.
Yeah, it's very weird. I mean, it's extremely hyper big, huge, beefy men and extremely busty, disproportionate women. And, you know, it's kind of all the things that you would expect out of like almost hypersexualized manga, but there is no sex. It's just combat. But again, these people are huge and they do fighting, and there's an allegory to like every major leader in like the world powers. Like the leader of the United States is Hillary Quintone or something like that, and it's Hillary Clinton. It looks nothing like Hillary Clinton, but the world is also divided up in a way that isn't what you would expect. Like China is only like a fraction of its size because Russia has taken over a bunch of it, but also Mongolia is its own country, and like it's kind of weird. Again, there's like all these questions about the world, and I just keep reading it because I'm like, well, what else could you throw at me that's going to be weird? And there's like this ongoing mini series of bonus chapters at the end of each volume where the Vladimir Putin character has given these bracelets to various animals because his whole goal is to ride these animals. He just wants to ride a giant bear or a giant squid or a giant moose. And then, oh yeah, this is how I figured out the series is over. It's ended at 7 volumes because this same creator went on to make a manga series that is ongoing about a Russian guy who wants to ride every animal he can get a top of. The bigger, the better. And that's his whole thing. I'm sure there's some sort of weird something else to this, but nonetheless, it's a weird book, and I keep reading it. So I'll report back once I finished it, because at this point I'm 3 volumes deep out of 7. I gotta.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I just put volume 1 on my tablet. So
okay, let me know what you think, René.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening intently to everything you were saying, while also looking at just images of this on Google, and
yeah, do yourself a favor, listener, and just do a quick Google search of this series, and you will be probably as shocked as I was and as curious as I was.
And, you know, just while you're at it, eat your favorite junk foods while you're reading this book. Just get all the junk out there, you know? I'm so excited to read this now.
Yeah, I really am excited to hear your report back. So let me know. But the other book I do want to talk about really quick is Roughneck by Jeff Lemire. I think this is 3 weeks in a row that someone has brought up a Jeff Lemire book, either as a pick or as something they read. So I apologize, listeners. The guy's prolific. I'm a really big sucker for Jeff Lemire's work. I'm sure everybody out there who listens to the show knows that. But long story short is this is a story about a very shitty person and his terrible life caused by his own bad choices. On top of like, you are constantly asking the question of like, did this person choose this life for themselves, or was it put upon them because of the life that they led based off of how their parents were, or how his parents were, and just some of the choices that they made. And I'm a huge sucker for stories like this where it's an asshole character who's trying to redeem themselves. And I will ultimately say this book got me right in the gut at the end. It's a fantastic end, and if you like Sweet Tooth, you'll love this book. I'll just say that. It's not as gruesome as Sweet Tooth because it's very much based in reality, but Lemire really, really hits you and pulls on every single emotional string you've got. And sometimes you need that. And this book, very good, and it's beautiful as a hardback. Holy shit! I grabbed this from the library, and it's just a fantastic looking book. I need to get a copy of it for myself. But that's me. I don't know. There's probably more I could say about Roughneck, but we'll move on. Let's talk about we're changing the format of the show a little bit. This is kind of a peek behind the curtain for episode 300 about some of the changes we're making for our comic picks and stuff like that. We're no longer going to be aiming towards like comic picks. Instead, we're going to be kind of aiming at what is just the next item on your to read pile, whether it's a book that's coming out this upcoming week or just something that's been sitting on your shelf. We're changing the name of this little section to what's on the top of your pile. For all of our patron supporters out there, you may recognize this is something we post on our Patreon every week, where you can see what comic books people on or off the episode that week are reading next. Sometimes that changes between now and, when we record and when the actual post goes out. But nonetheless, we're going to be asking the question now, what's on the top of your pile? Comic books are coming out on September 29th, 2021. René, what are you excited for? And I guess, what are you reading next?
Well, first off, I would like to say that it's very rude to just try and put me on the spot like this. No, I'm kidding.
We do this every week,
Good
René.
job, René. What are you reading, René?
Yeah, what are you reading?
I don't know how to say the title of this. It's just the letter P 6 times.
Yeah, I think it's P, 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 P.
Yeah, I'm just going to call it P from now on.
That sounds good. I like that.
But it's so I also don't know how to say this author's names, but I think it's Mapolo, or maybe it's Mapolo. I don't know. Mapolo 3. But it's a new manga. And it is about septuplets that are born to a piano genius, and 6 of them are prodigies and 1 is not. And it becomes such a huge problem in their family that the parents actually get divorced, and the one that is not a prodigy lives with his mom because she believes that he, can still play piano and that it's okay if he's not a prodigy. And the dad's like, no, absolutely not. He's mediocre. Don't let him play. And it's sad.
This just started in Shonen Jump, right?
Yeah. Chapter 2 is happening. So chapter 2 is the one that I'm excited about because I actually read chapter 1 and, through the tears, I was like, yeah, I like this. It's sad, but I dig it.
Right.
So,
I think some folks on our Discord were talking about this, said this was pretty good.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm excited to see where it's going to go. And so I'm ready to fall in love again, Mike, with some manga.
Okay.
I want to go through the journey. I want to go through the tears and the excitement and the, just the art and the storytelling. I'm ready.
Well,
I'm ready to be heard again. Okay.
I'm very happy to hear that you're talking about this because I was going to read this book, but I kept putting it off. But if you're excited about it, I'm going to check it out.
I mean, it's only been out for a week, so I mean,
I know, but I was going to wait. I was just going to wait. But if you're excited about it, I'm going to check it out.
I mean, I don't know. I would honestly wait probably for 3 chapters just because.
I mean, René just finished saying, like, I'm ready to be hurt again. Like, are you real? That's the pitch that won you over?
Yes. Did you not hear me talking about crying reading Roughneck, a story about an asshole who tries to redeem himself? I mean, this is the only way for men these days to get out their emotions is through fiction, Kara. Okay?
Ew, that's honestly, so sad for all of you.
Honestly, if you want a really good tearjerker, like read Haikyuu, although like it definitely helps if you like really played sports. There's this one arc where like one team loses and the captain's just like, please just let me play one more game, and he's like in tears screaming at the sky. That one always gets me. I'm tearing up right now at the moment.
Let's let René sit with that. And Kara, tell us what you're excited about this upcoming week or in the near future. What's on the top of your pile?
Yeah, I finally got around to getting that Black Widow series that Kelly Thompson wrote. The trade of the first volume came out earlier this year. And I love me a good semi-self-contained Black Widow story. So I am excited to finally read this one.
Good. And once you finish reading that, you can listen to me and Brian talk about that because we just dropped the Goodreads Book of the Month episode because that happened to be our Goodreads Book of the Month for September.
At that.
It's all on Patreon. I know we're plugging Patreon a lot, but there's a lot of good shit out there, folks.
Is there one artist on that book, or is it like were there different ones through the run?
There were like 6 credits on the page of this trade, so I just picked Kelly Thompson as the consistent one.
Okay.
I mean, I just know that this series was Eisner nominated, and I don't know. I really liked the Phil Noto version from a few years ago. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, well, how could it possibly top that art style? But let me read a Black Widow story.
Oh, this book. I heard about this, but yeah, this looks incredible. I might pick this up as well. So thank you, Kara.
Yeah.
I will say, without going too deep into the conversation that Brian and I had, this book feels like if you wanted something that wasn't the Black Widow movie, but felt like a good Black Widow story, like this one totally nails it. I think it's very, very good.
Okay. I mean, I did like the Black Widow movie. I thought I just was mad the whole time that, they did it after the fact. It's like, we already know what happens. Why are you doing this to me?
That's how I felt about Rogue One.
All right. I don't want to open that can of worms. My pick for this week, I guess before I go into what I'm excited for that's coming out, we did a couple folks on Discord give us their picks. Hugh said that they were excited for Inferno Number One / The Good Asian Number 5. I'm excited for both of those books this week too. So totally understandable there. And Danny said they're excited for Human Remains from Vault Comics. Is this I don't know if this is a graphic novel or a number one, but you can't really mess around. Danny says it's a new number one. So, okay, yeah, this looks should be fun. Vault Comics usually doesn't disappoint with their number ones, at least. Can't say the same for all of their completed series. Got 'em. But my pick for this week, I'm just going to be making jokes. Thank you. The book that I'm excited for, or whatever's on the top of my pile, still getting into this new vocal habit, is Inferno Number One by Jonathan Hickman, pencils and inks by Valeris Skidi, colors by David Curiel, letters by Clayton Coles. This is the culmination of Jonathan Hickman's X-Men, according to the solicit. My only notes are sure. Yeah.
I thought Hickman has been writing X-Men since like the dawn of time. Like, has he not been writing this book at any point in the last 30 years? I feel like he's always on it.
He's been writing X-Men on and off for like the last few years with the House of X, Dawn of X. He's like basically stepped back to be like an architect versus an actual writer. I don't know what that means in terms of
like Jeff Johns over at DC.
Yeah, kind of, but I think he's got a bit more hands-on than Jeff Johns has been recently. Like he's really just been kind of crafting this bigger story to make sure that all the points culminate back to this thing that they've been doing. And I think keeping everything in alignment with all of the seeds that he planted early on in House of X. It's a number 1 of 4. Which is cool by me. Like love me a good miniseries. The point of this book seems to be that Mystique is very, very mad that the X-Men who have the ability to bring people back to life have not brought back her one and only love, Destiny. And the reason why has been very murky. Obviously, the X-Men want to bring back all the mutants that have lost their lives over the years. But at the same time, Destiny is a precog. And there's a little bit of a snag here because if you've read House of X and Powers of X, you know that the end of the X-Men or whatever the end of this House of X, Powers of X goal thing that Jonathan Hickman set up is not a great one. I won't go into full details because I think everyone should read that, but having a precog who can see the future very vividly like Destiny could, it might not work out so well for the X-Men. So I don't really know anything about the original Inferno. To me, this doesn't sound anything like what I know the original Inferno series was about. But that being said, it being very close to my birthday, and also the fact that Inferno came out the same month and year as my birth, I feel like I should go back and reread the original series and just so that I can say that I know. I hate being that person sometimes, but ultimately I'm curious. But I feel like these aren't going to tie together, and that's fine. I just want more X-Men as always. New X-Men, really fun X-Men, and this seems like it's going to be right up that alley.
The same year and month.
Yeah. So we've been doing that comic book birthday thing where like we take an episode and we find a comic book that's come out the year and the month that we were born. And every single time I see Inferno Number One and I go, not this week. I'm going to pick something weird. And all of them have been disappointments. Well, with the exception of the Green Arrow book that I read, actually felt like a really cool, like everyone's smoking cigarettes style 80s movie in Florida, so I kind of actually want to go back and reread that. But otherwise, some of the other stuff we've read have been clunkers. But Inferno's on that list, and I've heard mixed reviews about Inferno from other folks that have read that in the past. So,
but I mean, it's an X-Men book during year and month you were born.
Yeah, 1988. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
destiny.
Yeah.
The only inferno I want to see is the inferno resulting from burning all those bad books. Oh!
With that, we're going to take a quick break.
Michael, go on.
Before we get into the break, I do have to say we have an interview that's going to drop in the middle of the episode with François Vigneault and Michael Tanner for the book that they have coming out on October 5th, I want to say. This is for Orcs in Space. A co-creator on this series is Justin Roiland, who you may know from Rick and Morty. But we spoke with François and Michael, and it was a fantastic time. I love talking to those guys. Very long, very fun interview. So check that out in the break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about the Disney manga Stitch and the Samurai Volume 1, which is a whole heck of a lot of fun. So we'll be right back.
Mike, I'm going to play us out.
Oh, okay.
Do, 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 do. Phenomena. Do, 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 do.
Phenomena.
Have fun with that one, Xander.
This is my favorite bit of all time.
So today I am here talking with François Vigneault and Michael Tanner, creators of the magnificent comic book coming from Oni Press called Orcs in Space. Volume 1 dropped on October 6th, so you guys should all check that out, either on Comixology, at your local comic book shop, wherever you get comics. François, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you, Mike.
I guess to get into things, could you both tell me a little bit about yourself? I guess, François, could we start with you?
If you insist.
I do. I absolutely do.
So I'm François Vigneault. I'm a comic book artist and comic book writer too, and I live in Montreal, in Quebec, in Canada, the Great White North. And I'm originally from the U.S., and I've been doing graphic novels or comic books for a long time, but at different kind of levels. And then Orcs in Space, which is the series I'm doing with Michael and a whole team of other collaborators, is like my first like monthly comic that's coming out like in the normal comic book store every single month, and is that kind of vibe. It's a little bit different.
Cool. And Michael?
Yeah, let's see. I'm a comic book writer living here in Los Angeles. I do some other kind of minor stuff, but for creative stuff, I'm really focusing on comic book writing. Orcs in Space is my first monthly as well, and that's a very kind of interesting, different skill in terms of comic books. But I have done anthology work and some one-shots, and then I started out with a graphic novel series called Junior Braves of the Apocalypse, which is still ongoing. There's 2 volumes out now, and then the 3rd volume is being worked on. It's a young adult survival horror graphic novel series, and so that's written for the trade paperback, so it's very different from writing a monthly. But it's I love comics. I just love comics in all its forms.
Well, that's good. I would hate to hear that you hated comics, but you're like, this is the job. This is the business.
Job. My dad did it before me, and now I got to do it, and my son's gonna do it too.
And you put on a big overalls. I got to go down to the comic mines today, son. That would just be awful. But we're here today to talk a little bit about this book, Orcs in Space. I guess to get into this is a wild book. I was doing a little bit of research on it. I was lucky enough to read a copy of the volume that came out. It's very, very funny. It's incredibly cartoony and bombastic in like all of the best ways. I guess this is like I said, it's kind of a wild book. There's 4 writers on the book. I couldn't find any crediting to like who was working on what and where. How did this whole book come together?
So I can talk a little bit about that, because François and I are both like the 2 last additions,
okay,
to the core creative team. So it originated with 2 brothers, Abed and Rashad Gaith, who I always point this out, that if the name Abed sounds familiar, Abed from Community, that character is based on Abed Gaith. They kind of knew Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland from their younger days, shall we say. Mm-hmm. So Abed and Rashad, both like big nerds. Abed has written a little bit on Rick and Morty, but Rashad, he really did like game design and stuff. But Rashad fell in love with a massive multiplayer online game where he played an orc, and he just loved everything about orcs. Mm-hmm. And him and Abed kind of like started the germ of the idea, and they took it to Justin Roiland, co-creator of Rick and Morty, and he kind of had input, and they were developing it. And they're like, well, maybe let's do it as a comic book and kind of see how it goes and see how it grows. But they've never written a comic book before. So I got brought in based on the virtue that I was doing Junior Braves with Oni, and I'd said, well, during the lull between Junior Braves books, like if you have any other work, like any licensed stuff, I'm looking for a job, and by virtue of being in Los Angeles with, Justin and Abed and Rashad, I think I got the job. And it's very funny. Like I kind of joked about it earlier, but like when I got the first outline for the series, I didn't get it. I just did not get what they were going for.
Oh no.
But I was like, a job's a job. And then I remember the morning of our first in-person meeting, where it was going to be like Justin and the brothers and editor-in-chief at Oni Press, James Lucas Jones. He was in LA. It was going to be at the Rick and Morty offices. That morning, I reread the outline, and it finally clicked for me. It's the three main orcs. It's the Three Stooges. It's the Three Stooges as orcs going on a space adventure. And I finally got it. Like, I really got it. And then I went into that first meeting, and we all kind of clicked, and we started developing it, and then moved forward. And then Francois can speak to when he came in.
Yeah, well, like Michael said, I came in at the end of the project. Like the guys had been working on the scripts for the book. I think it was like in various stages of development but it was for several years, I think, as they were kind of working things out. And then I think that finally it was just like go time, like Oni was like, okay, we're going to publish this. It's going to come out next year. So they had to find an artist right away. And I had worked with Oni Press the year before because they published the English edition of a graphic novel that I wrote and drew called Titan, which is literally, like, it's a bad pun, but I say it all the time. It's literally light years away from the universe of Orcs in Space. It just couldn't be more different.
Yeah. Having read that, I'm like, this is a very different type of book. I was very curious about that. Yeah.
No, I mean, it was kind of funny. I remember at the when I was first starting like the kind of negotiations and like the chatting with Oni and our Amanda, our editor Amanda. Our Amanda. And I was asking her, I was like, well, like one of my questions was like, well, they want this like in my art style, right? Like, and she said, yeah, totally. And then she was like, well, like a little touch of Justin Roiland into your art, if you can work that out. And I was like, I can work that out. And and so that's where you get like the kind of Gestalt style of Orcs in Space, which is like, in some ways, it's like a kind of a return to all the things I really liked as a young reader of comics. And what first brought me into reading and drawing comics was like sort of like adventure science fiction comics, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like Usagi Yojimbo, even something like the other day I was thinking about Sergio Aragonés, who did Gru back in the day. And I don't draw anything like Sergio Aragonés, but there's like a certain looseness to how I approach drawing each page. Like the pages are not they're not overly elaborated with like the pencils and things like that. I'm trying to have a little bit of freedom and fun and like vibrant feel on every page. And I was thinking about Sergio Aragonés way back in the day, and I was like, wow, yeah, it's been a long time since I read one of his comics, but Gru even was a big influence on me. So there's like just years and years of different influences that are coming through in the art. And I think that's also reflected in the writing that like Michael and the brothers and Justin are bringing to it, where there's all these different influences, and then it's kind of like a big pot and we're stirring it up.
Yeah. I mean, and that was kind of one of the things that I really enjoyed, is there was a mix of a lot of different, just like sci-fi and almost fantasy things that just made this book even more insane as you go through it page after page after page. And honestly, I had no idea where the book was going, and it just gets funnier and funnier as things go on. I mean, Michael, I'm curious to know, what was the writing process for this, as the four of you were kind of just mashing your heads together to make this into a 4-chapter story?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit of a wrangler. I won't say I'm wrangling cats, because they are very focused.
Sure.
But it's a lot of ideas, because they've never worked in comics before. It's a lot of like, yes, I get where you're going for, but how do we do that? How do we tell Francois how to draw that? Or like, how do we like get the letterer to be able to convey that? I remember, I don't think he'd mind, but Abed very early on was like, what if this character had like a funny voice? And I said, you can't do that in comics. Like we could explain like in the script, the letterer, like maybe do a different font, something that kind of evokes a funny voice, but you can't just be like, this character's got a funny voice. Like there's just that kind of learning curve with people who come from animation or people who just don't come from comics. They might know how to tell a story, but not necessarily in this medium. So that was a lot of me kind of honing things in to find like the perfect moments for like the panels and how to get the story going.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, and I guess Francois, like taking whatever jumbled mess of words that was handed over to you. I'm just kidding. But you know, taking the script from you know Michael and the rest of the gang, you know, like what was that like for you going from something like Titan where you worked on everything by yourself and just trying to interpret people's meanings and stuff like that? I'm sure you've worked with other people before, but like just given what Michael said.
No, well, that it was absolutely a really interesting place to come to, and I was really lucky because I actually hadn't worked with too many other collaborators on the writing side, like where I wasn't like, you know, fully enmeshed in the writing. But I did one right before Orcs in Space. I did a graphic novel with a novelist here in Quebec whose name is Geneviève Peterson. And that was really interesting because like the Gaith brothers, like she also had like, she was an accomplished novelist. She was an accomplished screenwriter, but she had never written a comic before. And so like when I got that from her, it was like a story, like a full prose story, like 25 pages. And then I had to kind of convert it into a 150-page graphic novel. And her prose would include things about like how things smelled and things like that. And it was very hard to do the translation. And so that was actually I'm really glad that happened right before I started working on this project, because it gave me a whole, how would I say that? Like a kind of a structure in my mind of like how I approach collaboration. And when I'm working with writers who are not me, like how I'm going to, you know, try and like take all their ideas, respect all the concepts and ideas and the beats that they have, and then exercise a little bit of my creative freedom also, so that that I think it lands the best it possibly can on like the 22 pages, you know? And so when I would get the scripts from Michael, Rashad, and Abed, there's always like a moment like at the very beginning. It's not like that it's a jumbled mess, like you said, not at all. But there's always a moment where I'm like, wait, how am I going to get all this onto the page, onto like the 22 pages? And then I'm like, and then slowly I start laying things out. And basically what I do is I draw everything digitally. So I do my very first pass, which is just moving all the words around and just figuring out like how many words are going to be on every page. And so sometimes that'll really change like the pacing that is in the original script. But I refer back to the original script, but then I also feel the freedom and the privilege to be able to push what they're doing, because if I think I can present it in a visual way that's slightly different from what they're doing, but is capturing the spirit of what they want to do and is going to really sing on the page, then I'll push that. And then, you know, so I do all my roughs, and then they and our editor, Amanda, they'll get everything. And then they come back to me with their, you know, like, they're like, oh, everything works good, except that we want this one joke to land here, or there's something we had planned, or we had a vision of this character as, you know, something a little bit different than you did. And then, you know, like, of course I come right back with them and I'm like, oh yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem, as soon as it's articulated to me. But I've been really lucky. I think that they basically have really trusted me. Michael can tell you if they have or not, but I think that they basically have trusted me to do, you know, to like get it on the page the way that they want.
Gotcha. All right. So Michael, now it's on you to reveal all the secrets to, you know, go against everything that Francois just said.
No, it's very interesting. Like one of the first lessons I learned in comics was my first published story in an anthology. Very simple story. Went off to the artist, and the editor came back to me and said, you know what, the art's come back for the story, but it doesn't really match your story. And we're on a time crunch. Can you rewrite your story based on the art?
Huh.
And I was like, well, how is that possible? How wasn't I clear? And I looked at it and yes, the art did no longer match the story. And I looked at my script and I was like, I don't think it was any like malfeasance on the artist's part. I think it was just a combination of me not necessarily being very clear and the artist not necessarily understanding the point of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So my very first lesson in comics is the artist is not in your head. So you need to either be very specific about something or be open to the artist just interpreting it a different way and then move forward from there.
Gotcha. Which I kind of brings us to one of the questions that I've been sitting on here is, when you think about something that was maybe the most challenging part of this book, do either of you have like a moment where you're like, this thing isn't working, we somehow need to tweak it to make it work for everything that we've done so far? Is there anything in your mind that like sticks out, and maybe you could tell the folks at home like what it turned from and what it is now?
That's a great question.
That is.
Michael, do you have any off the top of your head?
Yeah, I'd kind of go back to my original thing of just like not getting the concept early on, because they were new at this. Like reading that original outline, it was really hard to kind of like to figure out what the tone of it was. But once I figured out Three Stooges, then that let me kind of look at the core bits of their outline and see like what I'd be able to do to hit that Three Stooges in space kind of theme and that style to the story. And that really helped me kind of think about how I approached even like our writing sessions, like what we were going for. Like we wanted to have some very core emotional beats, but ultimately this is a story about three kind of idiots out of their depth, exploring a new world and just going with that and the crossover of the fantasy and sci-fi worlds. From the get-go, that was probably the hardest part, is figuring out like, because really like I did see myself as I am shepherding Abed and Rashad's vision into I'm the midwife birthing their idea into the world, So I wanted to make sure I did in the best way to really have it be their core idea just as good as it could be. And that was my goal.
I mean, well, it worked out as far as I can tell. I read it. I had a good time reading it. And I think it translates pretty well. I mean, Francois, was there anything like that you had to jumble and try to like cram into something, and ultimately it worked out really well in the book?
Well, I think that it was very much exactly like what Michael is saying, where where he's saying that like it's in some ways it's like he and our job is like kind of like the cleanup crew, like where we're making all these ideas fit into the structure of a 22-page comic, which is as anyone knows who's done a 22-page comic, like the beats are very tight and short, and sometimes I think that in reading the scripts I got the feeling like I can tell that there's like multiple writers involved, because it's like there's such a panoply of ideas, and sometimes I would get the in the script, and this is once again I think this is not knocking the script at all, and I think Michael and anybody else listening will know that, but like sometimes there would be like 9 panels on a page, and I'd be like, okay, but if I do 9 panels on the page, they're gonna be really small, and like one of them is supposed to be like a spaceship exploding in the middle of the panel, so I'd be like, okay, like how can I push and pull like all these things. But that to me is some of the most fun elements of it, is fitting everything into this structure. Like it's 22 pages. The pages are a certain size. There's a certain amount of beats that you can fit in, and then just being like, well, what can we fit in? And that sometimes that leads to some of the pages being like really interesting and wild, with like little micro asides, and like there's a lot of joke density where there's a lot of verbal humor going on top of like physical gags or something like that. And like I think that is because the script is so rich, because there's so many different ideas and influences going in. Like everybody wants we all want the comic to include like everything, and then like when it comes down to the final package, it's so slim that sometimes it can make things like feel really vibrant on the page. Or at least that's the feeling I got when I was working on it sometimes.
Yeah, to just go right off of that, I mean, like there is not an inch of space wasted in this book, and I say that in the best way. I mean, in the background, like you said, there's little gags and physical jokes and little bits and little like word bubbles. There's a moment where a rat's getting squashed, it's just got a little death symbol. I mean, it's very funny all throughout. I appreciate you saying that, to say like the reason why it feels that way is because you guys were trying to cram so much in, and I think it really is to the benefit of the comic. My last little bit here is of this story. Was there a favorite moment that either of you have, like your favorite thing that you drew, Francois, or your favorite thing that you wrote, Michael, that you're just like, yeah, we fucking nailed it?
Mike, I'll let you go first.
My favorite gag, and I think the one I'm proudest of, is probably the most like gross one, because I figure like because this is coming out once the first trade paperback is out. So
yeah. I mean, minor spoilers. We'll tell people here. Minor spoilers.
That there's a hole in the ship, and we set up that there is one solution to fix the hole in the ship.
Mm-hmm.
But my pitch and what we went with was that what if they just stuff all the dead bodies of all the space rats they just killed into the hole of the ship? They just plug it with dead bodies,
mm-hmm.
which I think is hilarious.
I will. That reveal,
and the art looks hilarious.
Very funny. Yes, exactly.
That's my proudest joke from the first arc.
That is an understandable one. That was a fantastic reveal. Didn't mean to talk over you there, but yeah, that's very good. Francois, do you have any favorite moments out of the book?
Oh no, I do. But I'm laughing because I think Michael knows too that when that gag came up, I like voiced concerns about that gag like at multiple points, like in the creative process, because I was like, I feel like there's been a certain level of like violence that's been like pretty tame, and then like suddenly we're escalating to a really heavy level at the very last second. And I was always like never sure. I was like, I will draw it. I'm drawing it. I'm still drawing it. I drew it, but every time I was like, are we sure that we want to include this? But now that I hear that it's Michael's favorite gag, then I understand why, because it's like, like he has it. There's passion in it, right?
In my defense, that was way before the book was going to be positioned as an all ages book. So now I just think about I do notice a lot of the violence is not toned down, but like in our heads, we had it the final issue in the first arc as being just like disgusting with like viscera and blood and body parts.
Oh my.
And Francois like turned it in, and it's violent,
sure.
And there's blood, but it's not as like extreme, like disgusting that we had envisioned. And so it was like, one day we're like, how come? And then it was like, well, it's an all ages book, and maybe a bit too much, guys. And
we'll have to do the NC-17 rated version, the director's cut. We can add in stuff. That'll be fine.
Yeah,
extra bloody variant.
Exactly. You'll have like everyone will cut their finger and put a thumbprint of blood on the cover and stuff, and limited 500. This sounds like a money printing machine.
It worked for Kiss. It can work for us.
Exactly. We did an episode, not to go completely tangent here. We did an episode all about like wild variants and stuff. Did you know that there was a comic that you could have bought like at one point in like the late 80s, early 90s that someone literally shot with a bullet? Like they sold like 100 copies of this. I had no idea. My mind was blown.
I totally remember that. I don't remember what title it was, but I think it was like Malibu Comics or something that did that.
Yeah, something like that.
I remember
that. Anyways, so let's just say if Oni Press, if you're listening, maybe we could do a blood variant or something. Give us a call. We'll figure it out. Anyways, well, I guess one last thing before we go here. Are there any comics that you guys have been reading that you really dig? Any comics that have like caught your eye that you're even sitting on your desk and you want to read next?
Yeah. I will throw a plug in for Francois's Titan, because I just finished that not too long ago. Very good book. Very sexy book in one scene, which I was not expecting. I'm like, I feel like there's a market for that book that we have that Francois and Oni has not tapped in yet. Very sexy book, and a very well written political book. Political sci-fi. I love it. Other books I'm reading. Oddly enough, I'm reading Orcs, not in Space, just Orcs from Boom Studios. Mm-hmm. That's a very fun book, and because I back a lot of Kickstarter books, so most of the comics I read are Kickstarter books that I eventually get. There's a series called The Surgeon, which I really like, which is a fun post-apocalyptic series, kind of like The Postman with Kevin Costner, but about a doctor instead of a postman.
Interesting. I also spend a lot of time backing Kickstarter books and trying to read as many as I can because there's just so damn many of them and they all look so good.
Right? Like I really have to limit myself. And for a while I was only I'm like, I will back them at just the digital level.
Right.
But I've never really gotten into digital comics. Like I like a physical media. So like I just, all right, I better back this physical version so I can actually read it.
Yeah. That I've had that same problem. Aster of Pan came out, and I was like, I have to have that on my shelf. But anyways, Francois, what about you? Have you been reading any comics, or are you eyeing anything to read next?
I am. Well, I went through a phase recently where I was reading like nothing, and I was buying nothing. I was like just not getting books, and then I kind of just broke out of it. And I went to a couple shops, like as kind of the lockdown measures kind of slowed down a little bit. They're obviously not over, but like stores were open, and I could go to the kind of like the Drawn and Quarterly bookstore here in Montreal and some other fun bookstores in town and pick up a few things. And I did. And so I have a few on my shelf that are either new buys or things that I'm going to read in the near future. I'm just looking over one that I just read recently that I quite enjoyed. It wasn't my favorite of his, but is Ping Pong by Taiyo Matsumoto, who I really consider to be a real genius in the world of manga. And Ping Pong wasn't my favorite of his things, but he's just totally a master at like drawing action and things like that. So basically anybody who draws comics can learn so much just by going through what he's doing in there. And then one of the next ones that is on my to read list is City of Belgium by Brecht Evans. Which is the English edition that Drawn and Quarterly just put out. And I've actually read it already because I did the lettering for it, but it's so the English lettering for it, but it's so different to read it. I was reading it like a sentence at a time. I'm really looking forward to actually just reading the whole book as as a continual mass. And then the last one that is on my to read list that I'm well, there's more, but the last one I'll mention is Isle of Elsie by Alec Longstreth. And since we were speaking about all ages comics, this is a true all ages fantasy adventure comic that I think it won the Ignatz Award the Eisner Award for like best web comic for kids or something like that just recently. Oh, and cool. I would really, really recommend it to anyone who's looking for something that's like just very warm, cuddly, sweet story with lots of wordplay, and it's great for people who have like a 10-year-old in your life who really likes to go on would love to go on an adventure or something like that. That is a really fun title, and I haven't gotten, it's just sitting on there on the shelf. I've only read excerpts of it, but I'm really looking forward to diving into the whole thing. And that's by Isle of Elsie by Alec Longstreth.
Cool. Well, I'll look all those up and make sure those are in the show notes for folks to look up, because we do love getting recommendations from folks that are in comics. But I guess the last thing I'll ask you guys is, where can people find you on the internet? I guess we'll bounce right back to you, Francois.
Sure. I'm on the Instagram at my name, François Vigneault, and I'll spell it because it's one of those annoying names. FrancoisVigneault. And that's all one word. So you can find me if you look up my name. I'm on Instagram, and then I have my website, which has more of my work and all that good stuff.
Sounds good. What about you, Michael?
You can find me on my website, bymichaeltanner.com. That's bymichaeltanner.com. On the social medias, Twitter is probably the best, where I am Mike is Ernie at Twitter. People know how Twitter works.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are the best places.
Sounds good. Well, I want to thank you both again for coming on our show. This has been a fantastic conversation, and everyone out there should go check out Orcs in Space from Oni Press. It's probably at your comic shop. If it's not, tell them to order it, get a copy, or go grab it online if you can. Thank you both again. This has been a lot of fun.
Dude, thank you.
Thank you for having us on. It was great.
This week on I Read Comic Books, we are talking about a comic that we decided to just pick and read. You know, we're changing things up. Like I said with episode 300, we're kind of changing the direction and the way we're going to do topics if we even have them in the future. So again, another preview behind the curtain of things that are maybe to come. So René, Kara, and I sat down, I think, after an episode and said, hey, let's pick something and read it. And this was the book that we decided on. Disney manga, Stitch and the Samurai by Hiroto Wada. This is volume 1 of probably, I don't know, a dozen. Who knows? Manga can go on forever. So I guess I'm going to throw this to Kara because, as we said in the break, this is her fault that we read this book.
Yeah,
so.
you were really kind in saying we picked this book when really what happened is I picked this book.
Well, we were talking about it because we knew that like the next episode you guys were going to be on together. We were like, hey, we're just going to pick a comic and talk about it. And I think you were trying to just find a meeting point between things that we all liked, right? Which is Disney and manga.
Right. So I'm here as the Disney person, and René is here as the manga person, and Mike is here as the guy who loves stuff.
Yes. Yes. I am here as the host. Yes.
So I have been reading Disney manga of late because it is a ridiculous subgenre, frankly. And some of the stuff I think they do make for the Japanese market, and then it gets translated into English. I'm pretty sure that was what was going on with this Stitch and the Samurai book. And some of the stuff I think is more Americanized style manga. I think the Nightmare Before Christmas stuff will fall under that category. And it's very interesting because with the Disney manga, they often are doing manga art styles that you would think of when you think of manga, but then the Disney characters are just there looking like themselves. So, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it's a little more like, oh, that's a choice. But this one I wanted to read with you both because Stitch and the Samurai felt, just from looking at the preview images, felt more like a manga like that just happens to have a Disney character in it. So this kind of starts out at the front of Lilo and Stitch the film, but very quickly deviates into something entirely different. So at the beginning of the Disney film Lilo and Stitch, which if you haven't seen it, you will probably cry, but it's good. So it's this alien monster who's been genetically created by an evil genius scientist. And in this tiny monster's escape from the space cops, lands on the planet Earth and befriends this small orphan girl, Lilo, and he goes to live with her and her older sister Nani, and there's this whole like foster care system thing, families that are reforming and healing thing, also some comedic elements from the evil scientist with the intergalactic agent coming to find Stitch, the alien here on Earth. And this manga, Stitch and the Samurai, starts at the point where Stitch is escaping from the space cops, but instead of falling to current day Hawaii, falls to feudal Japan instead. They make like a one panel allusion to the fact that he's warped the space-time continuum in his escape. So that you don't have to worry about it. And then Stitch, this tiny, adorable blue monster, falls like amidst this fierce warriors encampment. This warlord who's just out to murder people, but instead of murdering people, just gets waylaid by how cute Stitch is. And so I wanted to talk about this one with y'all because it felt more like, let's look at this manga that has a lot of manga tropes that you would expect from certain stories, and how they incorporate a Disney character who is from a totally different type of story. And René, what did you think as our resident mangaka?
Well, I mean, I read manga. I don't make it, but
you make it in your brain when you sleep at night, I assume. At this point, if you've read
all right.
so much,
Are you just viewing my dreams now? Because that's accurate.
I know it.
That's so accurate.
All right, so go on.
I don't know why, but for some reason, when Stitch picked up the first samurai by the spear, I saw that going very differently in my mind, because then he just dropped them, and I was like, he's made to be a killer, right? Like a monster. Why wouldn't he just start hacking away at the samurai? I was like, right,
Disney.
Yeah,
that's on me.
I mean, the style of this book reminds me of a lot of harsher manga that I've read, like Attack on Titan or Vinland Saga or Berserk. So I totally understand that, with the exception of the way that Stitch is drawn. He's drawn like a cartoon character, but everything else is drawn like very serious and timid. I totally get what you're saying.
His intro was perfect, because like you have all these very like harsh lines, and it's very, very in the character of a samurai story, and the detail they put into it is exquisite. And then they get to the ship, and he pops out, and it's just Disney.
It's almost like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit style situation, where like this cartoon character feels so out of place in this moment. But yeah, it totally works. I loved it.
I was captivated by how captivated our warlord protagonist feels about Stitch. It was very like, my one bold-faced note for reading this book was, who is she? Like, right. It felt extremely.
And we should say at this point, I know we're a couple minutes in, but full spoilers, I think, probably for this volume, just in case. I mean, you can get this, what we've said so far, you get out of the first like 10 pages of the book, but just in case we go a bit further, I will just say full spoiler alert right now.
Oh man, I laughed out loud multiple times while reading this book, because the juxtaposition between the intensity of the samurai and his intense yearning to just let Stitch feed him. Like, my God, I just want to give you a grilled fish. Just eat it from my hand.
Yeah, the intensity of just trying to find the right food for his new quote unquote pet raccoon, blue raccoon, was very adorable. Like, it's so funny to hear him go from one scene where they're like, "Sir, we have to take the next village. What should we do?" And then he says, "All I can think about is what food should I feed Stitch this animal next to make him like me."
Or like this one scene, or kind of early on in the book, where he's given Stitch some food, and then Stitch falls asleep, and then the samurai like lays down arm's length from him and is just staring at him, and it's like, his tummy looks so soft, I need to touch it. And he's like slowly reaching his arm over to pet Stitch's belly, and just then one of the soldiers barges in like, "Sir, what shall we do?" And he's like, "Ah!" And I was like, this is a scene from a romance manga. No? Like,
okay. I thought that same exact thing. I was like, this is kind of romantic.
Yes, I was very uncomfortable.
Romantic.
I was very uncomfortable the whole time.
I guess that's why this manga is rated teen. I mean, it says it's Tokyo Pop age rating. It says age is 13 and up for aggression and mild violence, but I think it should be for potential bestiality.
I mean, I thought it was rated T for violence, because they imply that they have killed many people.
Well, they were going to burn down a village that had women and children in it. And then he's like, hold on, something else is more important. This blue thing, I want to pet it.
I need to give him chestnuts.
Oh, the chestnut scene. They go gathering chestnuts because he discovers that Stitch really likes chestnuts with rice.
Yeah.
And then they go have this whole little, like, those are some beautifully illustrated chestnuts, I must say. Like,
Danny in the chat says it's rated T for love.
Just, man, those are some very nicely illustrated chestnuts, and a very nice moment where the warlord can be like, you can't just shake them from the tree. They have to grow and mature. And in my head, I'm like your love. Like, I'm so...
Right, dude... Yes, every single trope just on the table in this story.
The level of detail on the chestnuts and the trees and stuff, and then still Stitch is just wow.
just this flat 2D character.
A beautifully illustrated story.
It reminds me of the like the scene in the movie where he's lost in the he's lost, and the background is just so beautiful, and then like it's clearly like that was just a background, and then they just were animating him right there, so he looks just a little bit out of place. That's how the entire manga felt.
That's Renee. That's how animated films worked.
I know. I don't.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny though. I mean, Kara, to your point about this book being like really beautifully illustrated, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but the whole book is extremely detailed. And it's funny because like I said, I've been reading Vinland Saga, and so all I can see in this is just like the absolute brutality of that series as I'm reading through this, because as Renee said, like all of the samurai characters, all of the backgrounds, all of the horses, everything that they have are drawn like with extreme detail that you would expect from a brutal manga. And it looks very, very good. Like the mustache on the samurai's face, fantastic, right? And then you cut to the next panel, it's just this like little cartoon character, and it feels so out of place, and yet you can see the cuteness of it, right? Like Stitch as a character is a cute character. Can't argue with that at all. Like I told Kelly that we were reading this, and she went, "There's a Lilo and Stitch comic," and I went, "Yeah." because she loves this character, and like because he's just so adorable. So like I totally understand where this samurai warlord is coming from when he's just like, I want this thing to love me, not because I want to use him in any capacity, but because he's just so darn cute.
There were multiple times reading this that I was like, I can't believe I'm reading this. I'm reading this.
Yeah,
this is a thing that's happened in my life.
But did you also get to the end of the book and go, oh my God, I need to read the next one? Because that's where my mind went.
Yes,
no.
I need to know. Renee,
Renee,
we're different.
Where's your
people.
heart?
We are different people.
So one of my favorite sequences in this manga was Stitch's dreaming. He just wants to go back to outer space and figure out where the heck he's supposed to be, because he's looking around. Like he hasn't figured out that Japan is an island. Like he figures out very quickly that Hawaii is an archipelago. And like I feel like that's a missed. Like he should have been looking for cities or something to destroy, and realized very quickly that he was on just a teeny piece of land before cities were really happening in the middle of the ocean. And that would have been a different emotional response. Like in that, it's kind of weird, given what we know of Stitch's character, that he's just kind of hanging around with this warlord trying to fix his spaceship.
Right.
So this sequence is Stitch has fallen asleep and is starting to dream about the stars above him. And then it's unclear at the point where he wakes up and is looking at the stars above him, and then the stars gradually turn into fireflies. And he has this like very sweet moment with the samurai, where the samurai is explaining that, oh yes, I used to look up at the stars and they would remind me of fireflies, and the opposite is happening for you. And just that dream to reality to a story to not quite sure what part of reality it is, but it all still works. Like that's something that manga does very well, I think, getting that mood shift going.
Yeah, it's very rare to see like that kind of transition in a Western comic.
Yeah.
And even though Stitch is a name given to him by Lilo, we still eventually get there through.
Oh yeah, he does give him a name that's like a Japanese version of the word Stitch, until Stitch is eventually like, no, my name's Stitch. He's like, Stitch.
Which I guess is maybe they were supposed to be like, oh, he's mispronouncing it, but we get there anyways.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's a thing.
The story spends a lot of time just of the samurai trying to find ways to butter up Stitch, to basically get him to like him.
Yeah, it's a real tsundere story.
Yeah, and it's funny
I don't know how
that
to say that word either.
Tsundere, I think.
I don't know.
Either way,
what
I think
is
it's really
that
funny
word that you're both trying to say.
Oh, it's Renee. I'm gonna let you explain it.
Oh no! So
do it.
A tsundere or a tsundere is a character, and it's someone who's tough and cold on the outside, but on the inside, you know, they're very soft and sweet. So at first they're very like mean to the main character, the person of their affection, and they're just sort of like, oh, you can't break that hard exterior, but underneath, you know, they're just soft and cuddly,
soft and gooey.
Mm-hmm.
The best trope.
Right. I mean, if you've probably seen tsundere sharks on the internet, where it's like, it's not even like I wanted to talk to you, Baka, and it's like a blushing shark. Yeah. It's that kind of thing.
It's a shark?
Yeah, it's a shark. Anyways, the thing that I found interesting about this is that they do spend a lot of the time in this just focusing on their, like, the samurai trying to befriend Stitch, and obviously Stitch wants to go back to space because they're trying to fix their ship. But we do get like an actual plot of like a problem that's going to be happening in the next volume as the two, you know, villains from the movie actually make their way through the space-time continuum to Earth to find Stitch, which I saw some preview art for the next volume, and boy, does it look exactly like the movie in terms of the ridiculousness that these characters go to try to quote unquote blend into the feudal Japan.
Also, the mosquitoes are still a thing somehow.
Yes.
Even though, unless Agent Bubbles makes an appearance as well.
We'll see. I mean, again, all the more reason to read the next volume, in my opinion.
You know, reading this really just made me kind of want to watch the Lilo and Stitch movie, or like read Usagi Yojimbo, or The Elusive Samurai, which is currently being published by Weekly Shonen Jump and on the Shonen Jump app. Chapter 33 out today.
So it seems like this just made you want to consume any media that wasn't this. I clearly have not impressed you with my selection this week.
No, not any. Still samurai focused.
Yeah, I mean, I thought there was a lot of fun moments in this, though, overall. Like, I want to read the next one just because it was such an easy read. Like, it's not to say that, like, some books are harder than others to read by any capacity, but, like, in terms of I mean, that's absolutely not true. Some books are harder to read, but I guess what I'm saying is that there is a funness and a lightweightness to this book that really just made it super easy to digest, like just watching a popcorn movie or something that's not too complicated. The like Disney-ness of it, in that there's something kind of goofy happening, but there's actually like some character development, and ultimately by the end, whatever that may be, we're probably going to see some character growth, and we're going to love this character that we already love even more, and maybe some of the new characters that we've met. And I think that that's like a really hard thing to do sometimes when it comes to existing properties.
So do you think our samurai warlord is going to hang up his katana and walk away from murder and pillage?
I mean, did Lilo stop being like a rambunctious little child at the end of the movie? I don't think so.
There's nothing wrong with her. How dare you?
I know. Is there something wrong with this warlord samurai? I mean,
he murders people, Mike.
I don't know, Kara.
It was the feudal
apologist.
It was the feudal age. Okay, it was the Warring States period. There was.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see how this book concludes itself. Like, does the world become better having met Stitch, or does this character become better having met Stitch? And I mean, when it comes to Lilo from the movies, I mean, absolutely, right? She learns the power of responsibility and understanding that like her actions have consequences, and that like sometimes you do need a little chaos in your life in order for it to be fun. Is this guy going to learn that lesson? I don't know. Maybe he's going to learn to be a bit softer. But like that being said, even all the characters around him were making, not I want to say excuses, but they were justifying everything that he was doing. You know, when he decides to not raid a town and instead spends all of his time to try to find ways for Stitch to like him, they're like, this is an interesting strategy. We're not going to attack them at all, and it looks like it worked out in our favor because they did blah blah blah. You know, like I thought that was funny, and I love little hijinks like that in these kinds of stories.
It's just the continuous justification of, yes, following this one person as a leader is going to work out splendidly because they know exactly what they're doing and why. And it's like, your leader is currently wrestling with some feelings about touching an alien's stomach. So I don't know what to tell you.
And he's in denial that it's an alien. He's like, no,
I mean, at one point they think it's a koala, which I thought was probably one of the funniest jokes in the thing. One guy's like, I've heard of this elusive koala.
Also, like the drawing of the koala was so incredibly detailed. And then once again, that's not a koala.
Right.
Oh,
there was a horrible drawing in this book of a 6-legged raccoon, which I could not stop staring at when I saw that. Because at one point, Stitch grows 2 more arms to try to dig a hole, right? And the samurai is confused. He's like, I've never seen a 6-legged raccoon before. Did he always have 6 legs, or are his legs just moving so fast that I can see 6 of them? And then he goes, I guess some raccoons have 6 legs, and then they go to a depiction of an actual realistic raccoon with 6 legs, and it is horrifying. Again, the T rating is justified for moments like this.
It's just one of those. This makes me think that it would be something like if I had been like, if I was still in middle school when Lilo and Stitch came out, and this manga was in like the grocery store, and my mom walks by and I told her about this movie that I saw. She's like, "Hey, I think this is along that line. Maybe he'd just like this." And then I was like, "What does this have to do with the movie, other than the fact that there's one character in it?"
Right. Right. And then that book would shape your entire life. Renee, you'd grow up with the idea that anything is possible, time travel is a thing, and all stories are the same story. I mean, who knows?
I thought you were going to go with just, I only read Disney manga.
Right. I mean, that also could have become who you are.
We'll definitely have a lot fewer volumes.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, Stitch is a very popular character in Japan. 10 years ago, when I was briefly there was this store that I went to in Tokyo, and an entire floor of the store was just devoted to Stitch merchandise. Like, I walked out of there with like chopsticks and a bento box and like pouches and a Stitch shaped like rice shaper for your bento box. It was just
So you can get one of those Stitch hats, and I know they make Stitch onesies too.
Oh, they make Stitch everything. And there was actually a Lilo and Stitch show. I think it was an anime
a couple shows
that was produced exclusively for the Japanese market. Like, we still don't have access to it in America.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
So it's like a big deal. So when I was reading this, I was like, oh, I see. So you've figured out where the market is. We figured out where the demand is for Stitch, and I guess people just want to read stories where samurais try to feed Stitch grilled fish for 100 pages.
Well, I mean, and there's a bunch of other like Stitch manga too, right? Like I just did a quick Google search like for Stitch manga, and the first thing that came up was Disney manga Stitch Volume 1, and there's 4 volumes in it or something, or at least it's been collected kind of weird in on Amazon, but it's just about like more adventures of Stitch, where he befriends a young girl named Yuna, and he excels at karate because,
of course,
I guess Stitch can do anything.
He's a little war machine, so
yeah, this is true.
Oh man, if there was a Disney like Marvel crossover and Stitch was War Machine, I would read that.
What? I mean, Disney has all of the pieces in their toolbox in their toy chest, so they can do whatever they want.
We're trying to make money, okay? Any way that happens. Anyway.
Yeah.
So Beast would be the Beast from Beauty and the Beast.
Obvious.
And
Yes.
Like that's the given one.
Absolutely.
Unpopular opinion, but let's be real here. Tony Stark is going to be Gaston, and he'll have a redemptive arc. It'll be fine.
I would have thought Belle's dad would have been Tony Stark.
No,
because he's an inventor.
Yeah, but like,
Tony Stark is arrogant.
Right.
Terrible.
And then
we're getting so off topic. We're supposed to be talking about the comic movie.
No, this is totally on topic, because now I'm stuck in this hole right now where all I can think of is the dad from the 101 Dalmatians is somehow Star-Lord, and I don't know why, but it fits in my head.
No.
What?
Roger?
Yeah, Roger. Yeah.
Roger's so sweet. He's not a dick. Like, where would you get this from?
He smokes a pipe.
He's kind of just in my mind, he's kind of a dork. Like, he's a sweetheart, but he's a dork. And imagine if there was a better take on Star-Lord,
What would the 101 Dalmatians be?
They would all be Rocket Raccoon. I guess, okay, you're right. We've got a little bit off track here. I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts on Stitch and the Samurai? I know I asked the question before and I said it, but I want to read more of this. Do you guys think that you're at least going to maybe try volume 2?
Oh, no. I am.
Okay.
Renee's
Renee, give us your reasons.
I would just rather buy something else. I had the experience, and I know that it's out there, and I know along the lines of what it's going to be. I just don't like, sometimes you read something, you're like, I don't hate this, but I also don't feel like finding out what happens. Like, I'm okay with not knowing.
Totally.
Can't relate.
What about you, Kara?
Can't relate. No, they're about to bring in more Lilo and Stitch characters, so I kind of have to find out how deep the rabbit hole goes on this one.
I need to expand the lore of this world.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I just bought the second volume just now.
I do hope, though, that there is some fan fiction based off of this manga, and it's just out there, just expanding this into just vast world.
Well, this is the thing. Like, the more stories like this get published, the more likely people are going to try to take this idea and go further with it in a good way. Like, imagine if not just Lilo, but or not just Stitch, but also Lilo got transported back in time. They have to survive, and it's like a gritty Hunger Games style story, but Stitch is got an eye patch now and a gun, and I don't know, man. Anything's possible.
Yeah, if Stitch just became Oda Nobunaga, okay.
Yes. I don't know. I think it's fun that Disney is willing to publish things like this because it doesn't feel like the same regurgitated kind of story of just let's keep it all inside this very narrow world and have the same kinds of adventures. Like I was talking to Kelly about this and how I thought it was funny that this book existed because of just the ridiculousness of it, but that's what makes it kind of fun. And we were talking about the animated TV show that came out on Disney where it's, 626 or whatever is Stitch's number. And then the story is all about all of the other inventions and, creatures that we created and stuff. And I remember being a kid watching that show and going, oh, okay. But it's just kind of like a regurgitated formula of we got to find this thing. And then Stitch is the bad guy, but also the good guy. And he's going to bring them all together to make a family. And it just isn't a stretch of the creative mind to try to tell a story like that. It kind of plays into this narrative of Disney having to over explain everything to their viewers and only can play within within a small confine of their stories. Whereas Stitch and the Samurai is far beyond the understanding of what a Disney story is capable of. And therefore it has a lot more room to play with elements that never would have been introduced into a Disney story. And I think that's what makes this story really bold and interesting. And while it's goofy and it's for children or for teens. It's still it's something that's far beyond the imagination of what a simple Disney movie is capable of. And I think I respect it for that reason.
Yeah, this is what they read before they get into Twilight.
Look, there's a lot of interesting Disney stuff that they've been doing. That's this more sort of what if expansion of the properties, but done in either books or comics where they know that the general audience is probably not going to be looking out for these. There's this novel series called Twisted Tales that I consumed the entirety of during the pandemic, and basically they take these classic Disney films and say, what if this would happen? So it's like Marvel What If, but for Disney. And the bulk of them they're more or less following the plot of the film, but with slight variations. But some of them go way off and do some really cool stuff. My favorite ones are the Peter Pan one, where the protagonist is Wendy, and the what if conceit is, what if Wendy first went to Neverland with Captain Hook instead of Peter Pan? And it's not the what you're thinking about her crushing on him or anything, but she goes when she's older, so she's seeing Peter Pan as the annoying child that he is, as opposed to a love interest. There's a feminist friendship thing with Tinkerbell, and she is it's how does she change in Neverland if she goes when she's older as opposed to when she's younger. It was very well done. And cool. The other one that I found really satisfying was the Mulan one, where the part in, spoilers for Mulan, but there's a part in Mulan where her almost boyfriend almost dies, but she saves him, and so that's why he doesn't kill her when he finds out that she's a woman. And in this what if, he dies, so she quests to the underworld to get him back. And so she goes into the Chinese concept of the underworld from that time in history, and it's very cool.
Gotcha.
So stuff like that where they do, or even the Disney manga that I was reading a few months ago, where the whole concept is this modern Japanese girl is trying to learn how to be a karaoke star, and you can only do that through the power of song taught to you by various Disney characters all in the same volume. So they do some things, but you're right. Like at root, it's just like these larger Marvel IPs also, where you always kind of have to come back to who the character is that audiences know. So these more fringe expressions of what's going on that become a little bit closer to fanfic are like very fun, because you know that they're gonna like stretch things a little bit. Maybe it won't be so different from what you're used to, but it's always more interesting to see reaching for something new, even if it ends up being weird and vaguely bestial, like this the samurai.
Look, if this series gets gritty in a weird way, if like say, Stitch starts learning from the samurai and then the Lord ends up dying, and then Stitch for whatever reason becomes the next Lord, and then over the next 100 or so years rises in the ranks and then actually fights alongside the members of the Tokugawa shogunate when they become the Tokugawa shogunate in the Battle of Sekigahara, and like there's actual blood being spilt and stuff like that. Like I would read that manga.
Okay.
Renee, well, when I finish volume 2, I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's not going in that direction.
Folks in the chat are saying, where's my old man Stitch? Where's my Stitch Ronin? I like it. I like it. Well, that's
it's the Last Samurai, but with Stitch instead of Tom Cruise.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's too fun to think about. I was gonna I had a really hot take about the Marvel What If TV series that I feel like I can't fit into the conversation now, so we'll save it for after the show. But this is, I don't know, like I said, this is a lot of fun, and I'd be curious to know what other folks who are maybe not as plugged into Disney stuff are think of this. I'm sure that a lot of people have seen Lilo and Stitch, but I'd be curious to get other people's takes on this as well, because this is it's a very what if, it's very out there kind of story, and again, I'm happy to have read it. So yeah, I guess thanks guys for doing this. Next week on the show is episode 300, and I hope you're excited, because like I said, we're gonna have a bunch of announcements, we're gonna have a bunch of fun things. It's gonna be me, Nick, and Paul talking about comics and other stuff. We're gonna do some retrospective, I think, over the last 6 years worth of I Read Comic Books. And so hopefully if you can make it, please be there Sunday at 1 p.m. We'd love it if we had a bunch of people so we could do a live Q&A. And we're going to have if you don't listen live, that's fine. The episode is also going to have like a really cool edited together interview series that we did with everyone on the show. And I think you're all going to really like it, because everything that I've talked to everybody about so far has been incredible and really fun. So I hope you all enjoy it next week. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow Kara at KaraStam. You can follow Renee at Rodrigo29. And you can follow me at Mike Rappin, and the show at IRCB Podcast on Twitter and Instagram.
Sorry, I was gonna do a Rizzo the Rat thing for it. I can't. I can't. I'm gonna end up losing it.
All right, they're claiming that we need a Muppets
I know,
outro.
and that's why I was like trying to be like, and I am. I don't know. It's so hard. That's so hard.
I believe it.
No, I can't.
This episode first aired on Patreon, which is part of America. Part of America, the greatest nation in the planet. And is possible because of our wonderful patrons. Join today for exclusive series like IRCB Movie Club, Saga of Saga, and America. Join now at patreon.com/IRCB podcast.
Mike, do you want that to be the real one?
Yes, I do. We're going to keep it. We're keeping it. Renee, you got to try one voice for this next one. You got to do it.
If you haven't already, please rate and review our show 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps us spread the word about IRCB and Gonzo the Great. Ah!
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Join the IRCB Discord community to chat comics and more, and listen to our episodes live as we record at ircbpodcast.com/Discord. Kermit, I don't want to finish this. It's not about me, and I must practice for my song later.
Don't you worry about that. I'll take it from here. And if you would help us a lot, if you tell your friends or your local comic shop about the show.
Are we worried about getting sued?
You know what? Come at us. Come at us, Jim Henson.
Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all of our music. Xander is a cool guy who makes us sound very cool every week.
I want to say thanks to everybody who put up with that, and thanks to everyone for listening.
No, drums. That was the one.
Drums.
Thank you to Danny and Hugh for hanging out with us during the show. Thank you to everyone at home for listening. Thank you, Kara and Renee and Statler and Waldorf and Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, Gonzo the Great, Rizzo, and Lizzo. If you're listening, let us know. Until next time.
Comics good. You too.
Is it over?
It felt like an eternity. Whoa!
Excuse me. 05 second mark. 05.
Clap.
Cool.
Shut up, René.
I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting it. It was
Happens
perfect.
every time.
Every
It
time,
was
René.
perfect.
Every
It was
time.
I'm gonna ask Xander to put together a supercut of all the times we've all done claps, and it's just
That's episode 300 right there.
I just want him to make a montage of all the claps to that stupid song that's just like, and then it's Kara in the background just clap, 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 clap.
but it's like auto tune, so it's like it's the clapping, right? It's all of us just clapping, and then it's Kara's saying clap, put to the tune of Mr. Sandman, and it's just clap, 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 clap.
He could do it. He's
Give
an
everybody
audio
nightmares.
wizard.
Okay, let's
What makes you think I don't already suffer from nightmares?
All right, I'm starting the show. Give me 5 seconds of silence, please.